Go to nogovinternet.com and tell lawmakers enough is enough. Local tax dollars are precious, and public employees have plenty to do already. Don't let politicians mess with our internet. Paid for by nogovinternet.com, a project of Domestic Policy Caucus.
Give the best gift a Jazz fan can get. Tickets to a Jazz game. Or treat yourself with our holiday ticket packs. Getting a pack not only gets you to a game. With every ticket purchase, you can get $15 in Jazz notes for in-arena concessions on merch at the team store. Plus, each ticket comes with a ticket to a Salt Lake City Stars game. Get your tickets now by calling or texting 801-355-DUNK. Or by visiting UtahJazz.com. Happy holidays from the Utah Jazz. Imagine how inconvenient your life would be without power. No lights, no refrigeration, no heating or cooling, and no electronics. But with a Generac home standby generator, you'll have the power when you need it most. Generac generators automatically provide backup after sensing a power outage, so your life goes on uninterrupted. Schedule a free quote today with Genco Generators, your premier Generac service dealer in Utah. Call 801-295-0872 or online at gencogenerators.net.
Hi, this is Doug Ryder, and I've already mentioned that I saw Elf on one of the opening nights at Hale Center Theater, but the family did not go because we had a special event planned for December, and the other night we took the whole gang to see Elf, and it was delightful. As a matter of fact, I caught things that I missed the first time around. Dee looked over at me and said, "Check to your right." And I looked over there. We were on the last row, and some little kid there, 7 or 8 years old, was just grooving to Buddy the Elf. Every time he was dancing and singing, it was a delight. And there are still some tickets left. As a matter of fact, 115 shows sold out on Elf. Tickets for Elf make the perfect stocking stuffer. And then you can see it maybe a week later because there are shows on January 3rd, 4th, and 5th to see Elf. And a few tickets for A Christmas Carol. Season tickets for next year would be perfect from Hale Center Theater. Go to hct.org. And don't forget Clue and Fiddler on the Roof get underway right after the first of the year at Hale Center Theater.
Any Hour Services can help you make sure your furnace keeps you warm this winter. Whether you need a tune-up, a repair, or a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Lynn Thomas.
Well, Dan, a crash southbound 1900 west at 4200 south in the Roy area west of the freeway has now cleared, and that's good news. Transform your outdated kitchen with half-price granite. Granite, quartz, marble, and quartzite starting at $25 per square foot installed. Visit halfpricegranite.com. Affordable luxury. Len Thomas, the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, yeah, we're going to do it anyway. We're looking at several days of bad air quality and AM fog, and it's Saturday before the weather changes enough to get rid of the inversion conditions. And right now, we're at 29 degrees with fog. I'm Dan Bomas, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, and a Christmas surprise for sure. The United States Senate worked over the weekend and is still in session in our nation's capital, trying to find an agreement over funding for an aid package for Ukraine and the war effort there, along with aid to Israel, and any possibility of making real progress on border security. So the question beyond the headlines is, can Congress actually break through and resolve these critical issues before the end of the year? The Christmas surprise might actually require a Christmas miracle. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, there's a lot to cover in terms of what's going on, and it is a surprise that Congress worked over the weekend. The Senate did anyway, and they're still in Washington, D.C., so they're still working. Very surprising. They rarely get this close to Christmas. Usually they've already packed up, headed out, and are back at home by this point in the program. And so we're going to dig into all the avenues and angles that is keeping the Senate in our nation's capital. So you're going to want to stay with us for the next several segments of the show as we try to break down what's happening in the halls of Congress. We're going to talk about the rumblings coming out of the Kremlin in Moscow, Vladimir Putin actually gave an end-of-the-year press conference. I don't know if you can really call it a press conference, but that's what they like to call it. But it has big implications in terms of the Ukraine war effort, and so we'll break all of that down. So stay right here on KSL News Radio as we move you through the Christmas surprise of the Senate still being in session and any possibility of a Christmas miracle to get border security and Ukraine funding done before they head out of town. So let's start with last week. Last week, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer made an announcement. It was pretty stunning, pretty shocking on the Senate floor. No, it wasn't some new bill. No, it wasn't a great change to how the Senate would run. It was simply that the Senate would keep working over the weekend and into this week to see if they couldn't get some of the president's funding requests passed.
If we believe something is important and urgent, we should stay and get the job done. That is certainly the case with the supplemental. It is important. It is urgent. I spoke with Leader McConnell this morning about the plan for next week and making sure the Senate continues to do our work. So, for the information of all senators, after we finish today, the Senate will return on Monday. That will give negotiators from the White House, Senate Democrats, Senate Republicans, a time to work through the weekend in an effort to reach a framework agreement.
Now, I do agree with Senator Schumer. If it's urgent and important, Congress should stay and get it done. Absolutely agree. And far too often, we become far too comfortable in allowing Congress to just punt things down the road for another few weeks, another few months, and that's why we are where we are. So let's dig into what they're actually staying for. What is urgent and important that the Senate should be in session? Well, the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States, Oksana Markarova, appeared on Face the Nation yesterday to advocate for the nation of Ukraine as Congress continues to negotiate this aid package. Margaret Brennan asked the ambassador why time was of the essence for continued aid. Here's what she said.
Time is of the essence, and time is already running out. It's great that we have prepared thanks to the big support from the US, and you see already all these attacks on Kyiv. They're very similar to last year, but this year they were not able to cause blackouts for a long time. And that's all because we together worked so much and because American people helped us to prepare for this, and it's so much cheaper to prevent it rather than to repair it. But we really are counting on our friends and partners here. And, I believe in Christmas miracles. I really hope that, this Christmas will show that all civilized people, all people who believe in freedom, that we can stay the course much better than autocrats because they are uniting.
So important, I think, there from Ambassador Markarova. That time is of the essence. I think that's very clear, especially through these winter months. This is Vladimir Putin's dream is to drag this out as long as possible, distract, distort. And I think the ambassador got it right. It's much cheaper to prevent than to repair. The ambassador also went on to speak about the importance of the border talks and the impact that might have in terms of everything going on in Congress, and how she hopes whatever agreement is reached that it can be done quickly and include that support for Ukraine, not just defending, but winning the war.
All the eyes are on Congress now, and we really hope that this progress that we hear about, they will be able to find a solution. And look, as the former Minister of Finance, I negotiated many budgets with my parliament. I understand the importance of the local priorities, and I understand how important the border discussions are. We can just only pray and hope that there will be a result there, and that the deal that they will be able to reach will allow the fast decisions also on the support to Ukraine.
So it was the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States over the weekend, again, making the case, pleading the cause that we can't just continue with the status quo. Funding is running out. And will Congress step in and step up in a way that allows them not just to defend their sovereign territory, but to push Russia back and actually win the war? Senator Lindsey Graham appeared on Kristen Welker on NBC's Meet the Press to talk about the negotiations happening in the United States Senate. When Senator Graham was asked if the deal could be reached before the end of the year, He was a little bit of a Grinch, not too optimistic. Here's what he said.
No, I think this will go into next year. I've been talking to the people at the table. The only way we're ever going to get a secure border is we got to make them do things they don't want to do, but they're getting there. But there is progress on asylum. There's ways to go on parole. This is a policy choice that's led to the border being obliterated, and we're not going to take a Band-Aid approach as a solution.
Senator Graham went on to discuss with Kristen Welker what comes next in all of that in terms of that agreement. I want to skip down to Senator Chris Coons, Democrat, who's been part of these negotiations. He was also on Face the Nation yesterday. He gave the Democrat perspective to the border deal, which he supports. He was asked if bundling aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan together had been a strategic mistake for President Biden and the White House. Here's his response.
I think we're at a moment where all around the world, our partners and allies need to see that we are strong. There's also humanitarian relief in this package, critical to address the hunger that's been caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and to come to the aid of Israel, and to provide critically needed support for innocent Palestinians in Gaza. To put all of this into one package recognizes that it's urgent that we provide a signal to the world that we are still a reliable ally and partner.
And I also happen to agree with Senator Coons on that I think there are some important things in there. I don't think the senator really got to the issue of the president, I think, making a little bit of a strategic mistake in terms of just wrapping all of these things together. I think if they had picked them off, I think you could have done a little quicker, a little easier without all the controversy, because there's far more unanimity when it comes to Israel or Ukraine and Taiwan than there is with the border. So wrapping all of those things together, I don't think was especially helpful in terms of getting it done and all the way through. I do think Senator Coons is absolutely right in terms of the need for the humanitarian relief. But more importantly, his last statement that the package signals to the rest of the world, to our allies in particular, that we're a reliable partner here in the United States, that we will stand with those that are standing for freedom. And I think that's an important message that has been lacking coming out of the White House. And a lot of the confusion that this creates only helps Vladimir Putin, President Xi of China, the Iranian regime, and our enemies around the world. Because if our allies are wondering if we're a reliable partner, our enemies think that's a really good day for them. Now, finally, as we round out this portion of what we're looking at in our nation's capital, while there was some hope over the weekend, maybe a Christmas miracle, just in the last little bit, we've heard from both Mitch McConnell. There was also a letter from a number of Republican senators saying that they requested that this was just going to be too rushed, secret negotiations with Republican senior leaders and Democrats, and that there's not an open and transparent process, no way to read through and really figure out what's in this bill before they all break for Christmas, and actually requesting that they return to this January 8th of 2024. So again, a lot of challenges. Christmas miracle, that's what it will take to get all of these things across the border. We're going to continue to break it down in terms of what it is and what it means and what comes next. So stay with us. More of the conversation here on Inside Sources. Stick around.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
On Christmas Eve, Build-A-Bear.
I would not have thought in a million years that you were a Build-A-Bear kind of guy.
A Christmas memory from KSL News Radio.
I'm an 8 or 9-year-old child, and the only thing I really, really want for Christmas is a Barbie townhouse. The only thing I did not get for Christmas was a Barbie townhouse.
Did you get coal instead? Be a better kid, you'll get the Barbie townhouse.
No.
Merry Christmas from Dave and Debbie and everyone at KSL News Radio.
Merry Christmas, honey.
A Bernina embroidery machine? It's wonderful.
Bernina products are wonderful Christmas gifts that you'll love and use. Take advantage of these holiday specials at Dave's Bernina in St. George and Provo.
Save thousands of dollars on world-famous Bernina sewing machines, such as the B700E for $2,999, the B500E $1,999, and get a free $2,000 embroidery module when you purchase the 770 Kate machine.
48 months, no interest on certain machines.
Purchase the L890 Serger and receive a free Bernina Studio cabinet, a $3,250 value. How about $2,400 worth of free gifts when you buy a Bernina B790 Pro model?
25% off all Bernina luggage, embroidery hoops, and presser feet.
Amazing bargains on previously owned and demo machines with warranties at Dave's Bernina, 691 East St. George Boulevard and 2017 North 550 West in Provo.
Have you Googled yourself lately? Are there negative posts from an ex-employee or from a former client? Maybe an outdated news article or sensitive personal information about your family? Search engines don't always get it right. For right or wrong, it's your reputation on the line. That's where Reputation Defender by Norton comes in. One of the most trusted names in online reputation repair, Reputation Defender has been fixing people's search results for over 15 years. Their cutting-edge approaches help you to wipe away unwanted information in your search results. They also promote the good stuff so that it rises to the top, helping you put your best foot forward. Your good name is too valuable to leave to the whims of a Google algorithm. Take control with Reputation Defender. You can start by getting your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 800-401-6681 to speak to an expert. That's 800-401-6681.
Introducing Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. We're bringing all of Utah's favorite HVAC, plumbing, and electrical brands under one roof. Get your home's electrical system running in peak condition by scheduling a $79 whole home electric inspection with the professionals at Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric today. The electrical experts at Yes are ready to help identify unsafe conditions and possibly prevent expensive repairs in the future. Proudly serving Utah for more than 45 years. Call now or visit YesManCan.com for details, terms, and conditions.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers. On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms. Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact Todd Larson at KSL for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. Call 801-244-4822, 801-244-4822.
Every 2 seconds, someone in Utah needs blood. Help save a life with ARUP, the sole provider to university and Huntsman Cancer Hospitals. 2 locations and donor perks. Visit utahblood.org.
This week's movie show brought to you by Sound Sleep Medical. Get a free sleep screening and a free sleep consultation by tuning in on Friday morning. Sound Sleep Medical with 7 locations in Utah.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Ruby Franke pleaded guilty to 4 counts of child abuse, while a court hearing for her co-defendant is still pending. Second, the app meant to report animals killed on Utah roads is getting a lot of use for all kinds of critters. And third, after paying a huge fine, Southwest Airlines has a deal with the government to take better care of the passengers whose flights are delayed or whose luggage gets lost. Right now, 29 degrees and foggy in Salt Lake, and back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Last week, Russian President Vladimir Putin gave an end-of-the-year press conference, which he didn't do the year before. So interesting that he chose to do that this year. As the war rages in Ukraine and as Russia, China, and Iran forge tighter bonds, we need to take a closer look at what Putin said and read between the lines for the messaging towards the United States and towards the West in general. Really pleased to have joining us on the program today Dr. Harlan Ullman, Senior Advisor at Washington, D.C.'s Atlantic Council. He's also the author of The Fifth Horseman and the New Mad, How Massive Attacks of Disruption Became the Looming Existential Danger to a Divided Nation and the World at Large. And Dr. Ullman, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. And as we look at a lot of your writing, both in your book, you had a great piece in The Hill, really breaking down what Vladimir Putin said, didn't say, what was between the lines. Let's start with kind of a high level. What was your initial takeaway in terms of the, I guess we should put it in quotation marks, the quote press conference from Vladimir Putin last week?
The length of 4 hours, the specificity to which Putin answered virtually all the questions, to which he accepted criticism when he was being asked why certain airports weren't open, why certain trains weren't running, why people were not getting paid, why the environment was not being cleaned up. And the fact is that there were so many of these. It's interesting. I wonder if a U.S. president would be able to listen to all of them. There are over 2.1 million questions that were sent into Putin's website. And I think it's interesting to compare that with the United States without drawing any kind of conclusions. Obviously, Putin spent a small amount of time on Ukraine in which he made the usual statements. You probably know that about 3/4 of Russians either strongly support or at least tolerate the war in Ukraine, a larger percentage than in the United States, by the way. And a large part of his speech, which I found really interesting, was his discussion on sovereignty.
Yeah.
Now, why would he talk about sovereignty? And the way he did was to say that sovereignty has to be guaranteed by strengthening the economy, our army and security forces, and the social fabric of the country. And my reading of that was not only was this a campaign message to Russians because Putin is running for another term next year, but I think it was a signal to the United States, along with one other comment about the 2 Americans who were being held in prisons in Russia, in which Putin said he would be open to discussions. He also spent some time describing what the Russians are doing in terms of the amount of forces they have in Ukraine. He said, for example, that there were some 250,000 forces engaged, that they recruited not only the 400,000 more they wanted, but 486,000, and then went into a list of Ukrainian tanks, fighting vehicles that Russia has destroyed. Now, all this has to be fact-checked. I give absolutely no authentication to it, but it needs to be fact-checked. But it also needs to be balanced against the U.S. intelligence report that of the 360,000 troops Putin initially sent into Ukraine last February, some 315,000 have become casualties, along with about 2/3 of all their equipment. Now, if that's true, that is stunning. No military can sustain that loss. And so even if those figures are somewhat exaggerated, you will recall that in the Vietnam War, which went on for about 10 or 12 years, depending upon when you take the start date, we had over 58,000 Americans killed, 150,000 seriously wounded, but that led to a hollow force that took more than 15 years to rebuild. And so how Putin is going to be able to rebuild his military, which has taken far greater losses by any measure than we took in Vietnam, is of interest. But I do think the combination suggests to me that Putin may be up for some kind of talks or negotiations on the Ukraine war, and that his discussion on sovereignty was making the point to the Americans that we are back. Don't count us down and out. I'm in charge after the Prigozhin march on Moscow, and we are prepared to talk from a position of strength. And in any event, whether or not I'm correct, I think it's something that the administration needs to do very, very sensitively, because how do you negotiate with somebody who started a war, who we call a war criminal, and has imposed unbelievable amounts of horror and damage on Ukraine? But we did manage to talk to the North Vietnamese who were killing Americans in Vietnam. So I think that this is something that we ought to take up to see if that's possible, because how we end the war and ending the war in Ukraine is very, very vital, simply because I think we are suffering from Ukraine fatigue. And I don't think that we can continue to send the amount of support to Ukraine in sufficient numbers simply because we just don't have it to send, and because it's going to take too long to manufacture, for example, artillery shells in any number.
Yeah, so many pieces to unpack there, and I likewise found it so fascinating the focus on the sovereignty there, and really trying to reestablish Russia as functioning from a position of strength, clearly trying to leverage some pieces there. I also thought it was really interesting, and you pointed this out in your piece at thehill.com as well, that if the U.S. intelligence is accurate, if Putin understands he can't win, and you mentioned even if he's hoping, for another opportunity to negotiate with President Trump, that those aren't really viable. Walk us through what is viable for Putin. You mentioned he is up and running for re-election next year. What else is he trying to frame in these conversations that we all ought to be paying attention to?
He spent a huge time talking about the economy. He said that the economy is going to grow by more than 3.5%. Both public and private debt has been reduced dramatically, that unemployment is below 3%. And the only bad piece of news he expressed was that inflation is 7.5%. That was too high, and he assured his audiences that they were going to work to bring that down. Putin's economy, surprisingly, despite all the sanctions, has done very, very well. They have been able to isolate the ruble from the dollar. Because of all the money that they're spending on defense, they've supercharged the economy, which is why unemployment is low. They're doling out lots of money to dead and wounded, as well as to families on pensions. So in many ways, he's buying his way to some degree of popularity.
Yeah.
But at some stage, that's going to refuel inflation, and they're going to increase their debt. So at some point in the future, they're going to have to pay the piper. But the fact of the matter is, for all the sanctions we've imposed, they haven't done much good.
Yeah.
Now, what does that leave us? We are in this horrible position where we can't seem to agree on anything. The Congress is adjourned, and they should never have been allowed to adjourn without passing the Ukraine and Israel aid bill and fixing the border. And why they can't fix the border is beyond my comprehension. I can explain why, but that's not a satisfactory answer. On top of that, the spending bill expires first week in January.
Right.
So we could see a government shut down. And so if I were Putin, I would be, and I'm full aware of what's happening in the United States, then you have Joe Biden's declining numbers in terms of popularity, which I think he finds very difficult to believe, because I believe Biden thinks he's really helped the country enormously and is obviously frustrated not getting the responses and popularity he thinks and credit he thinks he's deserved.
Right.
So Putin thinks he's in a pretty strong position. And given what's happened in Gaza, what's happening in the Gulf with the Houthis, we need to find some way out of the Ukraine muddle, probably in the middle of next year, because that's a deadlock.
Yeah.
The Ukrainians have, in my mind, virtually no chance of winning. I don't think the Russians have a chance of winning. And unfortunately, President Zelensky of Ukraine has got to decide whether retaining 80% of his country with security guarantees is better than having none of it.
Yeah,
and at that stage, maybe we'll get a negotiation. But from our perspective, we need it because we've got too many things going on at home and abroad, and there's just too much death and destruction in Ukraine that could be tolerated.
Dr. Harlan Ullman, Senior Advisor at Washington, D.C.'s Atlantic Council. Great perspective, a lot to think about, a lot to chew on, a lot for Congress to think about, a lot for the White House to be noodling on, and a lot for the world to be watching, and we'll continue to do that. Again, Dr. Harlan Ullman joining us from the D.C.'s Atlantic Council. We're going to take a quick step aside for bottom of the hour news. When we come back, more inside sources as, of course, a top Biden aide is in Israel today. We'll break that down coming up next. Stick around.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomis. KSL's top local story this hour.
It was surprising, sensitive, and world conscious. The world, to some degree, was united in caring about this event and its star voyagers, with us on board and orbiting the moon, making the incredible journey safely back and performing a precision re-entry and landing in the blue Pacific. Continuing with One Sky, Many Cultures, the last 2 weeks we've been visiting the region in space where the Beehive Cluster and the stars where Horace the Bull resides.
The Roadkill Reporter app has turned 1 year old. The DWR has found some interesting data about wildlife patterns. Utah Wildlife Migration Initiative Coordinator Blair Stringham says this data has been used to apply for grants and funding.
The Ancient Ones, or Anasazi, of the Four Corners region saw it as well, recording a pictograph in Chaco Canyon, New Mexico, and other places. The star was bright enough.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
Hi, this is Doug Wright. Over the years, I've talked a lot about hard water. Takes years off the life of water heaters and other appliances in your home. Leaves scum on the shower walls, and you almost need a jackhammer to remove that. I've talked about how Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer, their water softeners are maintenance-free. You just don't need adjustment, and they do the job with 2/3 less salt than other softeners. But today, I want to talk about the exhilarating feeling of stepping into a hot bath or shower and feeling that pure, soft water cascade over your skin. It feels like every pore in your body wants to stand up and start singing. And afterward, there are no itchy hard water deposits sticking all over you. You really should look into a soft water system from Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer. You can learn more about Connecticut by giving them a call at 801-576-8600 or log on to Softwater Utah. Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer. Then sit back and enjoy your shower even more.
Bomas at KSL News Radio. Our top local story this hour. Utah Wildlife Resources has something called the Roadkill Reporter app that's just turned a year old. DWR has found some interesting data about wildlife patterns. Blair Stringham says this has been used to apply for grants and funding now.
We anticipate in the next couple of years this will be one of our key data sets to allowing us to get funding and to do these projects in locations where it's going to benefit wildlife and people the most.
Turns out deer are by far the most frequently hit animal on Utah's highways, but there are many others as well. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Families of the remaining hostages are putting additional pressure on the IDF to renew negotiations with Hamas. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said during Monday's daily briefing those negotiations still look like they're stuck.
I never want to bet on Hamas's good faith, but we absolutely will try to pursue a resolution here.
And 3 Israeli hostages were killed by mistake over the weekend. Your money at this moment. The Dow Jones average up on the day, 27 points right now. The NASDAQ up more strongly, 116 points right now. And our KSL weather looks like the smog is just not going to go away. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:34.
It's easy to think all money managers are pretty much the same. But at Fisher Investments, we're clearly different.
Different? How? You sell high-commission investment products, right?
No. Fisher Investments doesn't sell any commission-based investment products.
Well, you must earn commissions on trades.
Nope, never at Fisher. We're a fiduciary, obligated to act in our client's best interest. It's the highest standard of care for a financial advisor.
How do you know what's in their best interest?
We get to know our clients and then tailor a portfolio based on their goals and needs.
But you probably sneak in some hidden and layered fees.
No. We have one transparent management fee, structured so we do better when our clients do better.
Wow, you really do look out for your clients.
That's because our top priority is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement. It might be why most of our clients come from other money managers. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments. Clearly different money management.
Investments and securities involve the risk of loss.
Holiday Stories from Shane Company customers.
It's our first Christmas together, and I wanted to get her something special. That's why I went to Shane Company. They had so many great gifts to choose from. It was a toss-up between hoop earrings and an emerald bracelet. So I got both, one for under the tree and one for her stocking.
Shop holiday gifts in every price range. Fine jewelry crafted with care and made to last a lifetime. 'Tis the season to shine. Shane Company. Fine jewelry since 1929.
I was afraid to cut the cord, but I'm so glad I did. I was paying way too much for cable. I wasn't finding the shows I wanted, and the prices kept going up. Thankfully, I discovered a new way to watch called Philo. I get to see all my favorite stuff in one spot, anytime I want, anywhere I want, for just $25 a month. Plus, Philo's got unlimited DVR, so I never have to miss anything. It really is the best deal in TV. Try it out for yourself. Go to philo.tv. That's philo.tv. And start your 7-day free trial now.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Len Thomas. And our KSL weather, we're looking at several days of bad air quality and AM fog. It'll be Saturday before the weather changes enough to get rid of inversion conditions. And right now, we're looking at 30 degrees with fog. I'm Dan Bomas, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
President Biden's Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin visiting Israel today. He's the latest high-ranking Biden aide to visit the region, and his trip comes as the president faces pressure from within his own party to push Israel away from bombarding Gaza. His trip also comes amid increased attacks from Iranian proxies in the region, and as European ministers call for a ceasefire. The complexities, the difficulties continue to mount in terms of how this is being prosecuted and managed. What message is the Biden administration trying to shape and send as it sends these high-ranking officials to Israel in the midst of this conflict with Hamas? So we want to break that down just a little bit. And in a joint press conference with Israel's defense minister, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin discussed the need for Israel to protect civilians in Gaza.
Protecting Palestinian civilians in Gaza is both a moral duty and a strategic imperative. So we will continue to stand up for Israel's bedrock right to defend itself. And we will also continue to urge the protection of civilians during conflict and to increase the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza. That's important as Israel fights to dismantle the Hamas terrorist infrastructure in Gaza. And it will also be crucial for our work with our allies and partners after the fighting stops.
So a couple of important things in there. Clearly, doing everything that is possible to protect innocent Palestinian civilians is a moral duty and a strategic imperative. And the strategic imperative is that the more casualties there are, the more criticism mounts against Israel. I think it was important that Lloyd Austin also pointed out that Israel has the right, and the United States supports their right to dismantle Hamas, a terrorist organization, and that there is a path to all of this. Secretary Austin also alluded to and discussed the future of Gaza with Israel's defense minister.
Israelis and Palestinians have both paid too bitter a price to just go back to October 6th. So I discussed pathways today toward a future for Gaza after Hamas, based upon the clear principles laid down last month by my friend, Secretary Blinken. Israelis and Palestinians both deserve a horizon of hope. So the United States continues to believe, as we have under administrations of both parties, that it is in the interest of both Israelis and Palestinians to move forward toward two states.
Now, I think the most significant thing to me that Secretary Austin stated in that portion of the discussion was two words: after Hamas. And so two-state solution, we'll continue to drill into that a little bit in terms of what that means and what that could look like, where that's been, and who's actually been slowing that down and what that looks like in terms of future possibilities. But I think it's very clear, and I think we often get lost in the discussion, this is an after Hamas discussion. The terrorist organization who continues to spout terror and continues to proclaim that their goal is unchanged, that they will continue with October 7th style attacks against Israel until Israel is wiped off the map. So it makes negotiating pretty tricky. It makes all of this very complicated. And so while the talk of a two-state solution, which Secretary Austin pointed out, administrations, both Democratic and Republican, have been talking about the two-state solution. Hamas has been the one really slowing that down. Now, of course, Israel is saying, well, we're not so sure that's even possible anymore. So Secretary Austin commented on that, said the two-state solution is going to be difficult now but it's still in everyone's best interest.
Now, we know how hard that is, especially after October 7th. But ongoing instability and insecurity only play into the hands of Hamas. So we must think together about what lies beyond this terrible season of terror and war. And as we do, the United States will remain deeply committed to the security and self-defense of the State of Israel.
So very important there from the Secretary of State, some things that are just going to be challenging and very difficult to navigate in the coming weeks and months. I think this is not an easy process. This is not going to be swift. We have to remember there are still 138 hostages, 8 Americans being held hostage in all of this. So that's going to continue to be a significant problem and a significant challenge in terms of what is taking place. The messaging in all of this has been what's been most astounding to me in terms of the conflation of the issues, the role of Hamas as a terrorist organization. How do you negotiate and deal with that and trust that? How do you make sure that those innocent civilians inside of Gaza, the innocent Palestinian citizens, that they are protected? And how do you make sure that Israel has a right to exist and defend itself and to have its citizens be free from the kind of rampage and terror, the horrors of what took place on October the 7th? Now, in the midst of all of that, of course, things around the region are also heating up. So Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin spoke about and really fired a warning shot towards Iran to de-escalate tensions in the region.
We're working to ensure that this conflict does not escalate beyond Gaza. But as we are driving to stabilize the region, Iran is raising tensions by continuing to support terrorist groups and militias. Attacks by these Iranian proxies threaten the region's citizens and risk a broader conflict. Of course, the United States does not seek war, and we urgently call on Iran to take steps to de-escalate.
Defense Secretary Austin also responded to a lot of this aggression and explained how the United States is working to address these threats, especially from the Houthis and others that are really acting as a proxy for Iran.
These attacks are reckless, dangerous, and they violate international law. And so we're taking action to build an international coalition to address this threat. And I would remind you that this is not just a U.S. issue. This is an international problem, and it deserves an international response. And that's why I'm convening a meeting tomorrow, a ministerial meeting with fellow ministers in the region and beyond to address this threat.
Finally, Secretary Austin took a question on whether Israel needs to be less aggressive. Here was Secretary Austin's response on the challenges he's seeing on the battlefield.
The first thing is the complexity of this battle space. Three-dimensional battle space, very closed spaces, dense population of people. And so that makes it very, very difficult to conduct any military operation. Above and beyond that, we see that Hamas routinely uses civilians as shields. Beyond that, they place their headquarters and their logistical sites near protected sites, hospitals, mosques, churches, you name it. It requires a very professional force, and that force has to learn each step of the way. And we've seen that. And Minister Courant and I had a great conversation today about some of the things that they've learned and some of the techniques that they're changing and as they conduct operations in the South.
So a lot to think about, a lot to work through as it relates to what's happening in Israel and Gaza, the Middle East more broadly, and Secretary of State Lloyd Austin with some hard work, a lot of real tough hoeing there in terms of what needs to be done to create a path towards peace in that portion of the world. And it's difficult to negotiate with a terrorist organization. I think we have to understand that. And I think we have to remember what Secretary Austin said right there at the end, that yes, Israel has to be careful and cautious in terms of how they execute the war. And at the same time, Hamas is using human shields. They're placing their headquarters near protected sites like hospitals and schools. We know today they've discovered more extensive tunnels underneath many of those protected sites. And so it is something, as Secretary Austin pointed out, that the Israeli Defense Forces are having to learn as they go of how they can do that more safely, how they can protect more innocent civilian lives as they still continue to go after and root out Hamas, which is really where things have to go. And then we get to the post-Hamas portion, and then everything becomes very, very different. All right, we'll step aside for a quick break. When we come back, it looks like presidential contender Ron DeSantis' super PAC may be not just in turmoil, maybe a little bit more than that. So what does that mean for Team DeSantis with less than 30 days to Iowa? What does it mean for other candidates? We're going to talk to our friend David Drucker coming up next. Stick around.
Home for the holidays? Sounds nice, doesn't it? What if your home excluded summer yard work and was a one-level luxurious townhome with spacious rooms? Sounds even better. Preview your new home for the holidays at an open house December 18th at Nilsson Homes' newest single-level luxury townhome in Bluffview. These homes are move-in ready, no yard work, snow blowing, and close to what you love and enjoy with easy commutes. Experience the Nilsson Homes difference of what spacious single-level townhome floor plans and no stairs looks like. Nilsson Homes has been building across the Wasatch Front for over 45 years, accommodating all the things you need combined with the things you love. Ask about end-of-year promotional savings. Experience your new home for the holidays at their open house event December 18th, 5 to 7 p.m. Pictures with Santa and warm churros at the newest Nilsson community, 227 North, 3830 West Point. Visit Nilsson Homes Communities at nilssonhomes.com, Nilson homes.com.
Guys, does she need a little escape this year? Introducing Cozy Escape Pajamas from Pajamagram, America's PJ experts. These PJs are just the getaway she needs. So take that time off and plan a holiday staycation. Cozy Escape Pajamas make the perfect gift for your special someone who deserves a little rest and relaxation. Treat her to luxurious next-level Cozy signature soft fleece. They're as light as a dream and will keep her oh so warm, like snuggling in her favorite blanket. She'll love to cuddle in Cozy Escape PJs on those extra chilly nights. With Pajamagram, you can even add gift packaging. Order now for guaranteed delivery by Christmas. She's missed out on a lot of things she loves this year, so this Christmas, give her the escape she deserves. These new PJs are selling fast, so order today. Go to pajamagram.com right now. That's pajamagram.com to order Cozy Escape Pajamas. Pajamagram.com.
They say good things come to those who wait, but we both know the truth. If you want the good things in life, you've got to go out and get them. So if you've been dreaming of a Cadillac, don't wait. Head to Jerry Seiner Cadillac and get one for yourself. With their award-winning XT4, 5, and 6 models available on-site and the area's top selection of certified pre-owned Cadillacs, there's no need to wait to drive in luxury. Stop dreaming, start driving. Visit Jerry Seiner and experience the Seiner difference.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Dear Santa, thank you so much for remembering me this year. Christmas was the best. Thank you for the shoes, and I love the coat you brought. It's so cute and so warm.
At KSL, it's our hope that every child will have a warm and joyful holiday season. Please donate generously to KSL's Quarters for Christmas.
Every dollar raised goes to buy shoes and warm clothes for Utah children in need. Give what you can at kslquarters.com.
Get deeper insights on the news from inside sources.
Well, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis began his campaign for the presidency with an ambitious plan and an extremely well-funded campaign. However, less than 30 days before the Iowa caucus, the super PAC funding the DeSantis campaign is in big-time turmoil. Millions of dollars have been spent, and the Florida governor's path to victory seems a little more murky and a little less certain than maybe it did before he actually began. We want to get into what's the political story that we can learn from that. What are the principles behind that? What happened to the DeSantis political machine and all that cash? And does he have a path forward? Is there something from history that shows this kind of turnaround, which would be a big turnaround, is possible? To help us break all of that down, of course, we always turn to David Drucker, author and senior writer at the Dispatch. David, welcome back to the show.
Good to be here. Thanks a lot.
All right, so the DeSantis campaign came in full of promise and cash. Where are they now?
Well, unclear, Boyd. You know, what's amazing to me, I've probably said this to you before. Some weeks back, the governor received the endorsement of Kim Reynolds, the very popular Republican governor of Iowa. He received the endorsement of Bob Vanderplaats, I guess you'd probably say the state's top evangelical activist. And instead of just putting his head down and focusing on that really good bit of good news and trying to maximize it, his campaign and his operation broadly got mired in all of this internal controversy. And it's probably not fair to just lay it all at the feet of the governor. The super PAC operates independently by law. It cannot coordinate or take orders from the governor or his campaign officials. They could have also chosen to just grin and bear it and put their heads down and do what they need to do. And even though Never Back Down's been running a lot of television ads, even though internally there was a lot of dissatisfaction with the messaging in those ads, the one thing that Never Back Down is doing that I don't think there's been any complaints about is running the DeSantis campaign's ground game. Now, not officially the campaign's ground game, because, again, you can't coordinate.
Right.
But acting as the ground game. And that is one of the reasons why that well-funded, well-organized, very modern ground game is one of the reasons why, a lot of us covering this have looked at polling and said, all right, it looks like Trump's going to win Iowa, but maybe DeSantis still has a shot because that guy is going to be able to turn out voters for the caucuses. And a caucus is unusual. It's not like a normal primary. You've got to get people to show up for one night, then possibly a couple of hours at the caucus site. And, it's Iowa. It's cold. They're used to it, but still you got to get people out. Might be snowing. And so they could have focused on those great endorsements, the fact that they had probably the best voter turnout operation in a state where it really matters. But rather than that, they decided to hold a circular firing squad where people from the campaign side and people on the super PAC side decided to squabble with each other, complain about each other. And so now, we'll see if after all of that, the governor can pull off what would be a really big upset according to the polling. It's just the polling has been so consistent that it doesn't mean it can't happen or won't happen. And we've seen in the past where Iowa breaks late, and DeSantis would appear to be a really good fit, at least for an Iowa caucus electorate. But, I don't have anything to tell you that leads me to believe that I'd put money on it. I need to see data. And my best sources in Iowa, including sources that want Donald Trump to lose, have told me they just don't see it.
Yeah. And I think so much of that is, you mentioned that ground game and just how crucial that is. And I do think it was interesting that that this super PAC, really driven by Jeff Rowe, a pretty smart guy when it comes to campaigning and organizing grassroots, that they did seem to have a machine that was really starting to hum. And now that disarray, just with 30 days to go, to me is so interesting. It sort of proves out, I've always had the philosophy when I was a business consultant that there are very few business problems. Most of them are personality and ego problems. And as you pointed to, the circular firing squad kills a lot of really great plans and a really great opportunities. And so as you look at that and as you talk to your sources on the ground there in Iowa, it is the ground game place. I mean, it's where Barack Obama just kept plugging along, even despite the fact that it was supposed to be a coronation for Hillary Clinton. But his ground game, pulled it out and got it close and got some momentum even without winning. Is there anything the DeSantis camp can get some momentum or a positive coming out of Iowa at this stage of the game?
Well, number one, you have to stop providing news stories like this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's number one. This
Just
stuff's
stop.
going to
Yeah.
get covered. Number two, you've got to convince voters. And, look, in 2016, a couple of interesting things, right? In 2016, a ground game run by Jeff Rowe also pulls out an upset in Iowa, with Ted Cruz winning Iowa, even though Trump eventually wins the nomination.
Right.
At the same time, Trump eventually wins the nomination despite presiding over a very chaotic, inexperienced campaign. So it's not like these things don't happen. It's just that, Trump is usually the exception to every rule. And, part of this is just convincing voters.
Yeah.
I think strategically from the very beginning, the DeSantis campaign, and this is a campaign issue, I think, made a decision to try and go directly at Trump's base, that they would take Trump's base from Trump, and then the rest of the party would come along.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to take a committed Trump voter from Trump, as we should have all learned by now. There was, though, I think, an opportunity for DeSantis to appeal to the broad sort of swath of Republicans who are either against Trump no matter what, liked him once but now are tired and done with him, or three, might vote for him again, but really, but either really don't want to or are willing to consider somebody else. And I think if he would have thrown a bone to some of those groups rather than try to run just as a better version of Trump, he might have coalesced more support and then put himself in a position to compete directly with Trump.
Yeah.
Instead, he, decided to compete only with Trump from the beginning. And, I think between Trump and somebody who said they would do a better job of being Trump, they decided to just go with the real McCoy.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just think that was a strategic error. And look, the DeSantis campaign also had a lot of financial trouble early on.
Yeah.
They had to cede the ground game to Never Back Down, who had all of this cash left over from the DeSantis 2022 reelection campaign for governor of Florida. Now, granted, DeSantis raised all that money.
Yeah.
But the campaign didn't have control then over the ground game, and eventually they had to cede control of the campaign, basically campaign appearances to Never Back Down.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. David Rucker from the Dispatch. Always appreciate the perspective. We'll have you back as it continues to roll on. We'll be back with hour number 2 rolling on after this. Stick with us.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
Listen at home on any smart speaker.
And in your car at 102.7 FM.
This is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Former YouTube mommy blogger Ruby Franke is taking a plea deal. She agreed in court today to plead guilty to 4 of 6 counts of child abuse. KSL legal analyst Greg Skorda says these are still very serious charges.
Each of those counts carries a prison term, a potential prison term of up to 15 years. Aggravated child abuse simply means that the conduct was intentional. It wasn't an accidental.
Franke's lawyers made a statement last week indicating she will testify against her business partner, Jody Hildebrandt. A BYU grad in Utah has been stuck in Mexico for almost 5 months because of a clerical error. Melanie Heiner's parents brought her to the U.S. at age 2, and she says she should have been protected by DACA. But her attorney failed to file an important waiver, and now she's stuck.
It's devastating because I feel helpless right now, knowing that I did my best and it wasn't good enough.
She's been separated from her husband since August, has no idea when she'll be able to come back to the United States. Our top national story this hour from ABC News, Pope Francis has approved a policy change that will allow Catholic priests to bless same-sex couples, though it stops short of approving marriages between people of the same sex. AP reports the document reiterates the Church's position that marriage is a lifelong sacrament between a man and a woman, but it says people seeking God's love and mercy shouldn't have to go through an exhaustive moral analysis to receive it. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average just barely above the 0 point right now, 0.6 of 1 point up. That's considerably down from where it's been earlier in the day. The NASDAQ is up, though, 90 points at this hour. And our KSL weather looks like the fog is going to stick around a while. That's next. KSL News Time 2:02.
What do you need to hear in the morning to feel ready for the day?
Important news that happened overnight, the traffic you'll hit on the roads.
You'll be ready for your day with us.
Join Utah's Morning News 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Guys, want to lose weight, improve your performance, and increase your drive? Revive Men's Health Salt Lake can help you address the root causes of weight gain, low energy, poor drive, and performance issues. And since your testosterone level has a direct impact on your weight and fitness, we'll give you a free T-check and free exam at Revive Salt Lake. Imagine upping your game, losing weight, and getting in shape all at once. Revive can help you make it happen with our new cutting-edge weight loss medications, like your favorite athletes and celebrities use. They're affordable and available now. Weight gain and low T are treatable conditions. We know we can help you. Take that first step and book today. You're only one step away from getting in the best shape of your life. Call Revive Men's Health at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Where the steepest terrain meets the deepest snow. Snowbird is for the dedicated, those who seek a mountain experience beyond the greens, blues, and black diamonds. Averaging 500 inches of dry and light powder, unmatched steeps, and endless acres to explore. Snowbird is Utah's top powder getaway. Now with a Snowbird and Save lodging discount, receive 20% off on lift tickets, rentals, fast tracks, and more. When you stay slopeside at Snowbird, elevate your adventure with next level lodging and skiing this season by visiting snowbird.com.
Attention taxpayers. If you or your business owe the IRS back taxes, the IRS has greenlighted billions of dollars in tax relief to those facing financial hardship and is now accessible through Tax Help USA. If you have a delinquent tax problem and possibly facing wage garnishment, liens, levies, audits, or already in a payment plan, you may now qualify for significant relief. For this free information, call 800-948-9401. 800-948-9401. That's 800-948-9401.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Lynn Thomas.
Well, Dan, we have a crash in Utah County. This is southbound I-15, the Center Street off-ramp. You got a right lane closed, otherwise no accidents. The freeways are doing quite well. Still have some really sluggish traffic between the West Belt in Salt Lake City, I-215 West Belt, and 3500, the Bangalore Highway. A little tight traffic there for sure. Mortgage rates have fallen. Lower your payment. Find out more at Loans by Rick, Equal Housing Member, NMLS 287106. That's loansbyrick.com. Len Thomas, the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather. We're looking at several days of bad air quality and AM fog. It'll be Saturday before the weather changes enough to get rid of the inversion conditions. Right now, we've still got some fog, and it's 30 degrees. I'm Dan Bomas, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
One of the things we hit regularly on this program and try to highlight and showcase is the need for real leadership, to have a different kind of conversation around what leadership is and, more importantly, what leadership does. The need we have in this country for a new kind of leadership and how we can move past the two-party duopoly that just seems to continue to drive anger, fear, frustration, red-hot rhetoric, and very few solutions to the problems the nation faces. So as we look at that, and how do we fill the void of values-based leadership that we see in the country, we need to figure out a different path, a different strategy. Over the weekend on KSL 5 TV's Sunday edition, I had the chance to speak with someone who's attempting to do just that and to put together a different kind of coalition for a different kind of conversation about character-based leadership. Joel Searby joined me on Sunday edition. Here's a portion of that conversation. There's a leadership void in Washington, D.C. Lack of vision, lack of principled debate and compromise, lack of integrity, and a lack of moral conviction and personal character that has exposed the political left and the political right as being far more concerned with the preservation of their own power, money, and influence than on the preservation of the nation and the prosperity of the American people. I am convinced that with the local, national, and international challenges of our day, leadership matters more than ever, and character absolutely counts. Now, someone who understands this in a real way and is living it in a powerful way is Joel Searby. Joel is a political and leadership professional with 17 years experience in political campaigning, government affairs, corporate and nonprofit strategic planning, leadership development, faith-based initiatives, and new politics, which is the key to all of this.
Thank you, Boyd. Great to be with you.
You know, you recently quoted Utah's junior Senator Mitt Romney as saying, bad policy we can overcome as a country, we have in the past. Bad character is something which is very difficult to overcome. You've been driving a new way of politics, which is values-based. Describe that for us.
Sure, Boyd. Well, I launched the New Way Politics movement, Substack group, if you will, with a real focus on shifting our conversation in particularly political leaders and elections from a policy-based conversation or a power-based conversation, as you pointed out, or a personality-based conversation, which is a large number of political races out there right now, to a values-based conversation. And that is a very specific contrast. It doesn't mean, when you say a values-based leadership approach in politics, that there's some kind of Pollyanna view that we don't have to take stances, that there's not power dynamics involved, that politics isn't tough. It's that underneath kind of the why, the how of what we're doing when we run campaigns, when elected leaders and those who want to be elected leaders put themselves forward, that there is a real set of core values that drive the activity. And then perhaps most importantly, the decision-making that happens in that activity.
Yeah, no question. I want to get to some of those things because, as you said, it's not about Pollyanna. It's not about glasses that are rose-colored or half full or half empty. Get down to some of those core issues. And I want to go through some of those because I think they matter to this discussion. We need to change it. And I want to start with this area of personal character. When you talk about that from, again, this sphere, what is it that you're really driving at?
Yeah, I try to lay out a number of value areas that I think are important for candidates and really political professionals as well to stick to. And so in personal character, I try to keep it relatively simple. Commit to being ethical and honest and humble and tough. That tough part is important to me, and also helps to kind of fight back against this notion that, well, values are weak. In fact, I think it's our values that make us strong, and it's when we abandon our values that we're weak. It's why I think we're in a position right now as a country that our position in the world is weakening. It's because we've abandoned a lot of our core values of how we treat each other. And so being ethical, honest, and humble are really important. Adding the toughness recognizes that this is not an easy game that we play called politics.
Let's talk about another area that has been fascinating for me. We've become so transactional in our politics. You focus on relationships rather than transactions.
You know, relationships are the core of politics. Whether you are looking at it through a negative lens or a positive lens, politics is the business of relationships. It's brokering deals. It's getting to a point where we can govern together. That is the grand experiment that we have in this country. And so if we don't think long and hard about how we interact with one another relationally, I think we're on a really dangerous path, and that's where we're at. And so, you know, my commitment in relationships is to be collaborative, to be a listener, to be open-minded. It doesn't mean that you're soft on your principles. It doesn't mean that you're squishy on your values. I think being open-minded is realizing that, you know what, sometimes you're wrong. Back to that personal character value of being humble. We're not always all right. And if we can't admit that as leaders and as professionals in the political world, we're going to put our feet down in places that we shouldn't put them down. And then we're going to end up with solutions that don't work for people. And that is true in local communities, and it's true all the way up to the federal level.
Yeah, no question about that. And I want to get in one more component here, and that is how we evaluate the world. We live in this space of moral relativism, and my truth seems to be the driver of the day. You said we can have a different conversation when it comes to truth. Tell us about that.
Well, I keep it pretty simple on this one, Boyd, which is I believe that there is truth and we should seek it. It's an interesting moment in our history. I remember when I was in college quite a while ago, learning about the postmodern movement and how we were moving into this relativistic zone. And it was very often cast as kind of a leftist idea, right? That everyone's truth is their own truth. And it was largely coming from kind of the academic and philosophical and political left. But in the recent 5 years, that has been adopted almost entirely by the right as well, the far right and the far left. And here's the really interesting dynamic. It is a great unifier, I believe, of everyone who rejects the two extremes to say, you know what, there actually is truth. And we're going to have to seek it and we're going to have to find it. And we can't just say that, I'm going to make up a fact because that's what I want to see happen. And we have to really seek that truth together.
That's my conversation with Joel Searby. This was on KSL TV's Sunday edition over the weekend. And to me, there were so many things that jumped out in this first portion of the conversation with Joel in terms of character, value-based leadership that we seem to be lacking so significantly in so many of the important places in government, in business, and so on. And I love that Joel pointed out this idea that values are not weak. Sometimes we see a value-driven candidate and we paint them as being weak because they're running on these principles and values, and we say, oh, they're Pollyanna, or oh, they're naive, or they're functioning from a position of weakness. But the thing we have to remember and that we have to get back to is it is our values that make us strong. It is the values of this country. We're not perfect. We have all kinds of problems. We have all kinds of things we need to deal with, improve, rectify, restore, redeem. All of that has to take place. And in the midst of all of that, it is those values that has made this country extraordinary. I think back to a conversation we had with former Ambassador John Huntsman, and, of course, someone who knows his way around Russia and who knows his way around China. And he said adamantly that the thing that Vladimir Putin and President Xi of China fear is not our military, it's not our economics. They fear our principles. They fear freedom. They fear the fact that when people live up to those principles, when there is a sense of community, when there is a sense of dignity and humanity, it's hard to be a dictator. It's hard to survive as a dictator when the people have all of those freedoms. And so values don't make us weak. Values are what make us strong. And part of the reason why America is struggling on the world stage right now is because we've been abdicating our values. We've been buying into the moral relativism of the day, and it's caused us to be much more weak on the world stage because we're no longer standing on the principles that made the country great. And so the return to that is an important part of this discussion. Now, we're going to stay with my conversation with Joel Searby. He has launched a network to combat the duopoly of the left, the Democrats, and the right, the Republicans, because there is a machine, an industrial complex that makes it nearly impossible for a good candidate who maybe doesn't fit the perfect mold of either Democrat or Republican to run and win because they can't access the talent that they need to actually run a winning campaign. When we come back, we're going to stay with the conversation and talk about how you change that dynamic and take the power out of the party bosses and the machine of the industrial complex of the left and the right, so that we can actually have a different kind of politics, a different kind of campaign, and a better result for the citizens. Stick around. We'll stay with it.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Christmas memories for me always centered around BYU football bowl games. Think about the crazy finishes. Those were always amazing.
A Christmas memory from KSL News Radio.
For me, Mitch, I'll never forget in the 90s getting a Nintendo 64 with Mario Kart. I played that so dang much.
The new video game console, and then you're listening to Cougar football. It was always an amazing time growing up.
Merry Christmas from Mitch, Matt, and Cougar Nation, and everyone at KSL News Radio.
Deb, you may not believe this, but I actually do like to eat healthy food. I feel better when I eat healthy, and I do feel full.
I want you to start off 2024 the right way. Log on to fedupkitchen.com, and you can order clean, macro-based, low-calorie meals Not only that, they have treats and green drinks.
And they're prepared fresh in their Salt Lake City kitchen.
Order today, and they'll be ready for pickup or delivery tomorrow.
It's healthy eating made easy with Fed Up Kitchen.
You can save time, you can save money, and get results with their delicious meals. And like we said, they are made fresh daily.
And because it's the holidays, we want to make sure there's a little gift for you. You can save 20% on your first order. All you have to do is use the promo code KSL at fedupkitchen.com.
That's right. Go to fedupkitchen.com, put in promo code KSL, and you're going to get 20% off your first order.
Take the guesswork out of healthy eating. Go to fedupkitchen.com and use the promo code KSL.
I'm so stressed about my business not being ready for the holidays.
Ooma.
What is that? Meditation?
I'm recommending the Ooma cloud phone system with auto attendant and more than 35 features.
Ooma?
Yep. Switching to Ooma is a cinch. Starts at $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Now you're feeling it. Visit Ooma.com. That's OOMA.com to learn more. Ooma. Smart communications for the smarter business.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Warm up your savings this winter with a dividend rate increase from UFirst. For a limited time, any UFirst certificate opened with new money qualifies for a 0.25 rate increase on top of the prevailing rate. You can open most certificates with as little as $500. Don't let your savings go cold. Start earning more dividends on the full balance of your certificate today. Visit a UFirst branch to open a new certificate with an automatic 0.25% rate increase. Learn more at ufirstcu.com. Federally insured by NCUA.
Introducing Yes, heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and electric. We're bringing all of Utah's favorite HVAC, plumbing, and electrical brands under one roof. Maximize your energy savings with a new energy-efficient heating and cooling system from Yes, and you could save up to $4,500 through possible tax credits and other discounts. Purchase a new system today, and Yes will buy back your old inefficient HVAC system. Visit theyesmancan.com to schedule your appointment. Call now or visit theyesmancan.com for details, terms, and conditions.
Kidney cars, donate your car today. Tax write-off, hip, 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 hooray. Kidney cars, give your car away. Tax write-off, and you will save today.
The staff of the National Kidney Foundation of Utah would like to wish you a merry holiday season and remind you that it is better to give than receive, but not better than giving and receiving. For example, if you give your car to the Kidney Foundation, you may get a tax deduction. Call 1-800-TOW-CARS with a K. That's 1-800-TOWKARS. To donate your used car to the Kidney Foundation, call 1-800-TOW-CARS with a K. That's 1-800-TOWKARS.
Kidney cars, donate your car today. Tax write-off, hip, 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 hooray!
Call 1-800-TOW-CARS with a K.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a YouTube mommy blogger has pleaded guilty to 4 counts of child abuse. Ruby Frankie is now ready to testify against her co-defendant in that case. Second, a BYU grad who came to the United States as a child has been stuck in Mexico for months because of a paperwork problem. And third, Pope Francis has opened the way for same-sex couples to receive blessings in church, but not to get married. Right now, 30 degrees with some lingering fog in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. We're going to stay with the conversation that I had with Joel Searby yesterday on Sunday edition for KSL 5 TV. Joel's a longtime political and leadership professional. He's trying to change the conversation around the broken political system and trying to recenter a values-based, character-based leadership model. In my conversation with Joel, this is something we've talked about many times on this program, the two-party system in the country has built a very robust economic model, an industrial complex, and candidates who submit themselves to it are being stripped of the ability to adhere to the values with a high degree of success. And what I mean by that is it is really hard to run, whether you are a center-left Democrat or a center-right Republican, or anyone who's going to take on the establishment in either party. And the reason it's hard is because in order to win a campaign, and make no mistake, you have to win the campaign, you need good campaign professionals. You need people who understand polling, people who understand fundraising, people who understand a digital strategy, and all of the pieces of PR and communications and so on. The challenge is the two-headed monster that is the duopoly of the Republicans and the Democrats. The power base is so powerful that if an upstart candidate tries to take on an incumbent, again, either party, and they try to hire some professionals to work for them, those professionals will often get blackballed or wiped out by the establishment of both parties. I've seen it. I have seen consulting firms have their client list disappear because the leadership of the party says they're fighting against an incumbent. Take away your contracts with them. That's the challenge. That's the reality. And so part of what Joel Searby is trying to do is to create a network that can do it different. So that if someone's a good pollster, they shouldn't be afraid of losing their livelihood because they choose to support a candidate who they believe in, who has good values and character. So as I dug into this more with Joel Searby, we talked about the incentives of the current political system and how they've become so backwards, so distortive, and so destructive. Here's how he described it.
Well, it's rooted really in a system, Boyd, and I think that's important to note that I say that with a pretty sharp edge, but not to attack my fellow political professionals or any specific candidates, though I think some have really become, honestly, values bankrupt. But to understand that the way that the two-party system works is that it creates these two, what I'll call unvirtuous cycles, ecosystems, business ecosystems of professionals and candidates who are driven solely by the purpose of maintaining the political power of that particular entity. And whether that's the political party or whether that's a faction within a political party, these ecosystems spring up where there are professionals who will do that kind of work and candidates who rely on those professionals, and then donors who want to see that particular way advanced. And it just creates this cycle where values are completely thrown out, and the only thing that matters is winning, and therefore all the gloves are off and all the boundaries are off. And we'll say things and do things and bend the truth and break the truth that we wouldn't otherwise do. And I understand why it's happening, because it's a political and economic system that is, people are making a living and feeding their families on this. I'll never forget when I first started jumping into the independent space, trying to find other political professionals who would help me, many of whom really believed in the work I was trying to do, but would say things to me like, I just can't do it. I got to feed my family. And what they meant was, if I work with you on an independent race of some kind or some kind of reform effort, I will be blacklisted by the partisan ecosystem. And for me, it was normally on the Republican side, but it also happens on the Democratic side. And so they were disincentivized from doing something different or values-based because they had to feed their families. Yeah. And that's just a real problem.
Yeah, and I think as you look at that, that was one that was always stunning to me. You would have someone who was a great polling company, or someone who's a great strategic marketing company or a fundraising company, and they would get all excited about a candidate, but then if there was someone from the, quote, establishment, either Democrat or Republican, that big industrial complex, they would say, sorry, I can't do it because I'll lose all my other businesses and my other clients. And so talk to us, how do we start to get past that? I know you're launching something new that I think is long overdue, big hole in the marketplace, to create space so that people can say, okay, I can go out and do something that's right, or I can help a candidate that I really believe in and not worry about losing all my other clients in the process.
Yeah, so what I recognize, Boyd, I grew up in the Republican political system for the first 10 years of my political career. And the parts that are virtuous and not unvirtuous about that system is that it's a community of people, professionals and candidates who can get connected to one another to go run races and win them. That doesn't exist for people who want to run in a new way, whether they be people who want to run as independents or maybe minor party candidates or even Republicans or Democrats who just kind of reject maybe the extremes of their parties. They all have a hard time finding professionals. And so I've known that. I've seen that for the last decade. I described it a minute ago. And I finally realized that no one's going to build this unless I do. And so I'm launching the New Way Politics Leadership Network to meet that need. So candidates who want to run in a different way, they need access to consultants, pollsters, digital folks, data, fundraisers. They need access to best practices. How do I run my campaign? How do I go about even thinking about running for office? And then professionals who now, 10 years ago, I couldn't hardly get them to even talk to me. Now there's a huge number of political professionals who have said, I reject the craziness that's going on. I want to be a part of a solution. I want to work for candidates who want to run it a different way. I want to work for reform organizations who want to help break up systemic problems. And so we're creating this leadership network to allow those people to come in, to know one another, to be connected to one another, and for those candidates in particular to get the services they want. But again, all against this values-based backdrop. That's my lens that I'm looking through. If people want to be a part of it, I'm going to say, can you be on board with these values? Can you approach personal relationships and integrity and truth and systems in this kind of way? And that's what we're doing.
I think that's such a powerful model. And let's talk just in our closing moments here of how you do create that space. Because part of it, I think, is everyone saying, what are you afraid of? And, of course, politicians will tell us you can vote for whoever you want, but if you don't vote for me, you'll lose power, you'll lose influence, all of those things. How do we create space so that those people of character with integrity, not just Pollyanna, kumbaya kind of stuff, but winning elections and governing, how do we create that space?
Well, I go back to what we started with, Boyd, which is I really believe that it's our values that make us strong. And when we abandon our values, that's what makes us weak. We have allowed ourselves to believe this lie that what we really need is a strong man or strong woman whose values we're just going to forget about. We don't care what values they have as long as they will fight for the things that I want. And I just think that's actually the weak approach to take. And so we have to reinsert values as a strength and as a way that makes us strong. So we avoid that Pollyanna, kind of, oh, well, this is the weaklings are running on values. No, the strong people run on values. We look at our greatest leaders over the course of this country. I guarantee you will find core values at the center of that. And so how do we do that? We've got to put wins on the board. We need independents, minor party candidates, non-extreme partisans to be winning races. And that's why I'm building this ecosystem and this network. We have to be able to win.
That's my conversation with Joel Searby. That was on Sunday edition, KSL 5 TV. You can check out the entire interview there. It's an important piece, an important part of the discussion, and they have actually launched. You can go to newwaypolitics.com and see how they're gathering this group of candidates, professionals, consultants, to see if they can't do this in a values-based kind of way. It's fascinating to look at. I think it's important for the country that we give that a good look and see how we can do it just a little bit different. Well, coming up as we talk about value-based leadership, one of the great examples of a new kind of leader is Ian Rowe, who's been a great friend of this show. Stay with us. We're going to come back after the break and highlight an incredible conversation I had with Ian based on this question: is the American dream truly dead? Many younger Americans seem to think so, but is it really the end of the conversation? Find out more when we come back on Inside Sources.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Former YouTube mommy blogger Ruby Franke is taking a plea deal. She agreed in court today to 4 to 6 counts of child abuse, 4 of 6 rather. And Franke's lawyers made a statement last week indicating that she would be testifying against her business partner, Jody Hildebrand, as the case continues. The Great Salt Lake is getting a lot more visitors now. Dave Shearer, who manages Great Salt Lake State Park, says they've seen tourism double since the pandemic. Just this year, it's risen by 40%. Shearer tells KSL TV he thinks the rising interest in the lake could be driven by the threat of it disappearing.
The people in the Wasatch Front are now seeing what it really is and coming out and experiencing it.
The Great Salt Lake hit a record low last fall, thanks mostly to last year's record winter. It's now 3.5 feet higher, but he says it could take years before it reaches healthy levels again. Our top national story this hour from ABC News: Apple will be stopping the sales of its latest model Apple Watches. ABC's Mike Dubusky has more.
This Thursday will be the last day to order a new Apple Watch Series 9 or Ultra 2 as the tech giant navigates a patent dispute with the medical device company Masimo. A federal trade agency has found Apple engaged in copyright infringement with a sensor in its watches known as a pulse oximeter, which is designed to measure oxygen in the blood.
Apple says it strongly disagrees with the agency's finding, and the Biden administration is reviewing that ruling. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average closing trading today, up but just barely, less than 1 point. The NASDAQ, on the other hand, was up 90 points today, and the S&P 500 up 21. And our KSL weather looks like the fog is going to stay with us for a few days more. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:32.
We have enough people running around Broadcast House at 4 in the morning to field a football team.
Producers, reporters, the traffic team, and us.
This is Tim and Amanda.
Join us each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
My dad has a cold, but also has high blood pressure. That's why I got him Vicks NyQuil High Blood Pressure for fast, powerful nighttime relief. Unlike some ordinary cold medicines, it's specially formulated for people like my dad. NyQuil High Blood Pressure is sugar-free, alcohol-free, and decongestant-free.
Vicks NyQuil High Blood Pressure. The nighttime sniffling, sneezing, coughing, aching, fever, sore throat, cold, and flu for people with high blood pressure.
Like my dad.
Medicine. Use as directed.
O'Reilly Auto Parts can help you find a repair shop with our shop referral program. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts or visit O'ReillyAuto.com.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Some intimate parts need the gentle, easy trim of a Gillette trimmer. And some need the closeness and comfort of a Gillette Intimate Razor. While others need a Gillette Anti-Chafe Stick. Gillette Intimate, the best a man can get, down there. Buy now.
Up to a 30% upfront bonus and 12% per year guaranteed growth for retirement. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and these are the highest guarantees with annuities I have seen in my life. When interest rates are this high, there are silver linings, and annuity guarantees are one of them. Up to a 30% bonus upfront for retirement income. On $100,000, that's up to $42,000 guaranteed in the first year. And it's because of the economy and its high interest rates. Don't let anyone, especially another financial advisor, tell you it's not true. Up to 30% upfront just for opening an account and up to 12% per year guaranteed income growth. Don't miss out. This won't last forever. If you have an old 401k, get up to 30% upfront and 12% guaranteed growth for income today.
Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Lynn Thomas.
Well, we have a crash southbound I-15 in Utah County. It's the Center Street off-ramp. The right lane's closed. Also, we have another one up far up north there, southbound Main Street, 800 south in Brigham City in the right shoulder. Fed Up Kitchen is Utah's premier healthy meal prep service. Save time, money, and get results with our delicious meals made fresh daily. Right now, save 20% on your first order. Use promo code KSL at fedupkitchen.com. Len Thomas in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we're looking at several more days of bad air quality and AM fog. It'll be Saturday before the weather changes enough to get rid of our inversion conditions. And right now, we're at 30 degrees with some lingering fog. I'm Dan Bomas, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, as we come down the home stretch of 2023 and as 2024 approaches, all of us here at Inside Sources have been really looking back and trying to think through some of the conversations we've had, the thought-provoking guests we've had on this show, powerful interviews during the course of 2023. And so as we go throughout this week, we're going to share some of our favorites, some of the things where I've learned the most, or been the most inspired or challenged. And so we're going to share those with you every day for the next few days as we round out 2023 and get ready for a big 2024. So I want to begin this whole process, and we'll do this every day at 2:35. In March, I had an opportunity to chat with Ian Rowe. Ian's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. He's also the co-founder of Vertex Partnerships Academies and the author of Agency, the 4-point plan for all children to overcome the victimhood narrative and discover their pathway to power. So in talking with Ian Rowe, we began by talking about the American dream. Many young people today believe the American dream is done and dead. And a lot of that's because they've been told so by society, that they're victims, that they're powerless, that there's no path to prosperity for them. But Ian Rowe says that the next generation can take their future into their own hands with 4 critical pillars or institutions.
You asked a very profound question. Is the American dream dead or is it alive? And I can thankfully say it's vibrantly alive, provided our young people are supported by the institutions that we know really drive human flourishing.
Yeah, and so as we look at that social capital, that community, civil society, I know is a big part of your work, both from an academic standpoint and a think tank standpoint, and from on the ground, what you do every day. And so give us a little sense in terms of where you think we are in terms of that ability for our young people to pursue the American dream.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, I'm the founder of Vertex Partnership Academies, which is a new international baccalaureate high school that we've just launched in the Bronx. And prior to that, for a full decade, I ran a network of elementary and middle public charter schools right in the heart of the South Bronx and the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Almost all low-income kids, almost all Black and Hispanic kids. And unfortunately, many of them live in an environment where the message they're getting almost every day from almost every institution is everything that they cannot do in this country based on certain superficial characteristics. Yeah. And I run schools because I want my students to know that they can do hard things. Yeah. That there are pathways to power regardless of circumstance. And what I've observed, certainly over the last few years, and really accelerated after the death of George Floyd, have been these 2 what I call meta-narratives that, in my view, are robbing young people of the sense that they can lead a self-determined life. And the 2 meta-narratives I call blame the system, and the other I call blame the victim. In a blame the system narrative, that's a view of our country. It's a view of America that says America is inherently an oppressive nation, that based on your race, your class, your gender, the systems are just rigged against you. That you are powerless in the face of these forces. If you're Black, there's a white supremacist lurking on every corner, or capitalism itself is evil, and that these forces are so discriminatory, so overwhelming, you have no individual ability to overcome them. And so therefore, if that's true, then the only answer can be massive redistribution programs like government reparations or other just overwhelming initiatives that take the power out of your own hands to lead your own life. So that's obviously a very debilitating narrative. Yeah. But on the other side, there's also what I call the blame the victim narrative. Yeah. Now, that's a view of our country where America is not the problem. America is great. America is the land of opportunity. You're the problem.
You're the problem.
Right?
Yeah.
You are somehow the architect of your own failure. If you have not been able to take advantage of all the opportunities that exist here, it's you who did not pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Well, let me tell you, it's really hard to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. For example, in the district where we just opened up our school, only 7% of kids that start 9th grade 4 years later graduate from high school ready for college. 7%, right? Which is worse, that you start, you drop out, or you actually do what you're supposed to do, earn your diploma, but you still can't do reading nor math without remediation, right? So it's really hard to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps if you're and by the way, in that same community, if you had an idea to launch a great school, you couldn't do it because there's a legislative barrier against
regulatory.
opening, so these two narratives of blame the system and blame the victim combine to just create this overwhelming sense of either I have no power or it's your fault for not being successful.
Yeah.
Both of those are debilitating. And so as we'll see in the course of this conversation, I'm never satisfied with just explaining the problem. What's the empowering alternative that we put forth? And that's why I wrote my book, Agency, and we'll talk about the 4-point plan.
Yeah, and that empowerment is such a critical part, and it's this idea that it's not the shoulder shrugging and finger pointing and placing blame or taking blame. It's the shoulder squaring empowerment.
Yes.
Where everything happens. And I actually want to start, before we get into some of these principles, I want to start with your story and your American Dream story, because you've lived it. You've seen it.
Yes.
Give us some perspective.
Well, like most people on our planet, how you were raised has a fundamental impact on your worldview and what you believe you have the capacity to achieve. And I'm the child of Jamaican parents that came to the United States via England, which is why I was born in London, and not
Which is why you can't run for president. You can't run for president, which I'm devastated about.
Unless the Schwarzenegger Amendment is.
We'll get that. We'll get working on that.
But my parents came to this country in 1968. Two black parents, and they were quite cognizant of what was going on. There were riots in the streets, obviously a lot of racial division, but they knew that the country was changing. They had seen the Civil Rights Act pass, the Voting Rights Act. My dad actually got a job as one of the early black engineers at IBM.
Wow.
My mom got a job, and this will probably date some of your audience members, but Manufacturers Hanover Trust, also known as Manny Hanny.
Wow.
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Right. So, so here are my parents working in professional roles and, just being a great example for my brother and I. And ultimately, they were married for 48 years before my dad passed away. Wow. And so I know it's quite possible in terms of the early infrastructure a child needs to really have a sense of what they can accomplish. And with the strength of a strong family, strong faith, strong education, and we'll talk about how those three now play in my philosophy today, why that's so important. But in terms of my American Dream story, the one of the earliest memories I have is when we initially moved to Brooklyn. And then ultimately we moved on up to Queens. We moved to a small town in Queens called Laurelton, Queens. And Laurelton, nice small town. It was predominantly white, Jewish and Italian. But it was slowly becoming more racially integrated. More black folks were moving in. And unfortunately, that led to a lot of racial tension and violence and incidents. And, you can look it up in the early 70s of Laurelton, New York. It was a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I was in junior high school at the time.
Wow.
And junior high school 231. And the school our school almost became the epicenter of a lot of these violent acts. And so our school board decided to solve the problem of all these racial incidents was to open and annex another junior high school in Rosedale, a couple towns over, which it was in a more predominantly permanently white part of town. And so what all of the white parents in junior high school 231 decided to do was to take their kids out and move them
to the annex,
wow. Leaving 231 as now a all-black segregated school. And my parents, who had come here in search of the American dream, on the premise that where the white kids go, that's where the better education will be, they were going to send me to. And you have epiphany moments in your life, and this was one. You know, when I was 12 years old, and there was the Sunday night before the Monday that we had to send in our, transfer papers. I begged my parents. My dad was in his recliner, which he always sat. My mom was on the couch, and something didn't seem right about this. I begged my parents to stay. Why should this school now be bad suddenly because these other students are gone? I love my teachers. I love my school. I'll work really hard. I'll do it. And I had never questioned my parents about anything.
Wow.
Right? I mean, they'd made all the right decisions as far as I was concerned, right?
Yeah.
And but something didn't feel right, and I begged, I cried, I pleaded, and they ultimately relented, and they decided to let me stay in 231. Wow. And I wouldn't have described it then the way I describe it now, but I think that was my coming of agency moment, where I felt I had ownership in my own future. Like I really pushed for something. So my level of investment in my own education at that moment was drastically different. Yeah. And I'm now trying to find, through my schooling, through my speaking, through my book, ways to have every kid find their coming of agency moment.
Coming up, we're going to get to the second part of my interview with Ian Rowe and the 4 pillars that drive success as we look back at some of the crucial conversations, some of the things that I've learned over the course of 2023. Stick around. We'll be back with part 2 of my conversation with Ian Rowe. Coming up next on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio.
One thing that is so good is the food that you get at Christmas.
Oh, you know my favorite is to make baklava.
A Christmas memory from KSL News Radio.
Not only do I just love making my grandmother's baklava, it's just so wonderful to share.
Christmas morning, I have a bowl of Golden Grahams, and I'm just happy.
I need to come to your house. Your life is much simpler than mine.
Merry Christmas from Maria Ton and the KSL Greenhouse at KSL News Radio.
Guys, does she need a little escape this year? Introducing Cozy Escape Pajamas from Pajamagram, America's PJ experts. These PJs are just the getaway she needs. So take that time off and plan a holiday staycation. Cozy Escape Pajamas make the perfect gift for your special someone who deserves a little rest and relaxation. Treat her to luxurious next-level Cozy signature soft fleece. They're as light as a dream and will keep her oh so warm, like snuggling in her favorite blanket. She'll love to cuddle in Cozy Escape PJs on those extra chilly nights. With Pajamagram, you can even add gift packaging. Order now for guaranteed delivery by Christmas. She's missed out on a lot of things she loves this year, so this Christmas, give her the escape she deserves. These new PJs are selling fast, so order today. Go to Pajamagram.com right now. That's Pajamagram.com to order Cozy Escape Pajamas. Pajamagram.com.
Hi, this is Doug Wright. A little experiment here that you can try in your home just for fun. Take 2 water heaters, run hard water through one and soft water through the other, then count how many years each one lasts. Now, of course, I can save you all that trouble because the experiment takes place every day in countless homes right here in the state of Utah. The result's always the same. Hard water makes water heaters and other appliances conk out years before they should. And that's why when Dee and I build our new home, I informed the builder that we'd have Connecticut put in our soft water. I just won't settle for anything else. With Connecticut, you'll use 2/3 less salt. All the mechanical design makes it virtually maintenance-free. And I'll tell you what, your water heater and other appliances will last years longer. All you have to do is contact my friends at Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer. To learn more, call Connecticut. It's 801-576-8600 or log on to softwaterutah.com.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers. On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms. Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact Todd Larson at KSL for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. Email tlarson@ksl.com. That's tlarson@ksl.com.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Well, as we wrap up the show and round out the year, we're highlighting one of our favorite interviews and one of our favorite thinkers from 2023. And we're going to do this every day this week as we approach the new year. Today, we're highlighting Ian Rowe, author of Agency, the 4-point plan for all children to overcome the victimhood narrative and discover their pathway to power. In the last segment, he discussed his story, an extraordinary story. And now Ian talks about how he came up with the 4 principles, FREE, free. Family, religion, education, entrepreneurship, and what he believes is the secret sauce for success for everyone.
Well, in my professional life, I've had great opportunities to work with every kind of young person: rich kids, poor kids, white kids, black kids, Asian kids, Hispanic kids, kids in homeless shelters, religious kids, non-religious kids. And I've seen a lot of young people being raised in very challenging situations: domestic violence, poverty. And unfortunately, as they made their decisions entering young adulthood for themselves, they recreated the disadvantage that they had experienced. And yet I saw other kids in similar situations make different kinds of decisions where they were able to break the cycle of disadvantage. And I've really tried to step back and kind of say, was it what made the difference, right? What was there? Is it that these kids were just like LeBron James and they had these skills that they broke out, or was there anything in common? And what I identified were these 4 pillars of family, religion, education, entrepreneurship, in which, regardless of the family that you're from, these young people, as they made decisions, were focused on the family that they were going to form, usually following something called the success sequence, where data shows if you finish just your high school degree, get a full-time job of any kind, and if you have children, marriage first, 97% of millennials who follow that series of decisions in that order avoid poverty. And that was my first observation, that in thinking about family, that was the first big set of decisions that young people that break the cycle of disadvantage held in common. Second was that they usually had some kind of personal faith commitment.
I'm going to stop you for 1 second, Ian, because we were having a conversation before we came on the air about family and fathers that I think is a crucial component to this that often gets overlooked in a lot of places. And I know if you've been traveling around the country and having this conversation about where young men are in society and why, I know that's part of that family formation. Give us a quick hit on that.
Well, part of the reason I'm even in Utah is that we've been holding a series of free forums around the country, starting in Birmingham, Alabama, and Chicago, really trying to think of what are the key pillars of upward mobility. And what we're putting forth, that family, religion, education, entrepreneurship are anchors. Utah is kind of the star, particularly as it relates to family. I mean, the latest evidence, I think, is that in the non-marital birth rate in Utah is only about 19%. You rank 50th in the country. That's a good rank. That's a good ranking.
That's a good time to be 50. Yeah.
But that has enormous implications. In the school system that we just launched in the Bronx, in the district there, the non-marital birth rate is 84%, right? Think about what the difference would be in that community if the rate were 19%, and think about what the devastation to your community here would be if the non-marital birth rate were 84%. These are fundamental data points, but it translates into real people and real actions, particularly by young men who don't understand the enormity of the decision, and young women, when they come together and they don't make that fundamental commitment to each other and then to their child. And so my acronym for FREE, it's not ERF, right? It's not EERF. It's free because family is the foundation for everything else. And so that's one of the big pillars we're going to be talking about here, particularly in Utah. Why? What is it that makes a community, an entire state, have this attitude towards marriage, family, fatherhood, and other communities, like places in the Bronx and other areas around the country, that have dramatically different? And that's why the role of these key civic institutions makes such a difference.
Yeah, so talk to us about that role of faith and religion as a component of that civil society and that social capital.
Well, the second observation I've made of young people who broke the cycle of disadvantage is, in addition to that they were on their pathway following this success sequence, they had a moral framework to make decisions. They had some kind of faith commitment, something that helped them make decisions when the inevitable challenges of life came through. And it didn't matter if it was Christianity or Buddhism, but that there was some set of tenets in their life that they could always fall back on. In addition, they were also part of a community of people that all abided by these values and these tenets, right? So there was an expectation of the communities that when you sort of broke out of it, you could be kind of shamed or excommunicated. So it created the invisible hand to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And so that's been another observation of mine of kids who were able to break the cycle of disadvantage.
Those principles and those tenets, I think, are so powerful. We often say on this show that we only talk about politics so we can comment on society, and we do social commentary so we can get to principles and the people who live them, which is why we love having you in the state today. And that's such a crucial, again, component of that social capital and breaking that cycle. I know you spend a lot of time in the education space, obviously, but give us a little snapshot of that.
Yeah, well, the third observation for young people who break the cycle of disadvantage, they typically have benefited from some kind of educational freedom, school choice, charter school. They had a parent who, by hook or by crook, was going to get them into a good school. This is why the issue of charter schools, for example, in New York City, I mean, wait lists to 40, 50,000 kids, almost all low-income kids, desperate to get into school, and yet you cannot open a brand new charter school in New York now because of a artificial legislative barrier. And this is happening all across the country. So that was the third element of my free framework. And so if a young person was on the path to forming a strong family, has a strong personal faith commitment, has benefited from educational freedom, that usually lays the groundwork for the final E in free, which is entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is normally associated with starting a company, and my definition certainly includes that. But it's more about this idea of being a problem solver in your own life. That if you've got that foundation of family, faith, and education, you're more inclined to take more educated risks. You have a sense that you can kind of respond in ways, again, to life's inevitable challenges. And so developing this idea of an entrepreneurial mindset is the final component of free. And so that's why I've put this forth as my empowering alternative to the blame the victim and the blame the system ideologies, because I believe free, the institutions of free, is what helps young people build agency. And that's what we're here to talk about in this forum in Salt Lake City, because no matter how great you are in Utah relative to the rest of the country on many social indicators is phenomenal. There's a great book called Good to Great, right? There's always another level of greatness. And so we're going to talk about how